Rob, welcome back. How's your week going?
Thanks, Brendan. Yep, a couple of really big deadlines that we're working on at AP Plus at the moment. So head down, but always delighted to come on and talk to the community and answer questions.
Well, we got some good ones this week. We have two that come from NASA. First, in the last 9 months, two members left the council while one joined. Has there been any change in the way the governing council chooses and welcomes new members? And second, once accepted, how long do members of the governing council have to announce?
Oh, we seem to get governing council questions like this every week, but I appreciate it's a USP for Hedera, and the governing council is quite a key part of the community's thinking about Hedera, and I'm always happy to address these questions. The question's actually not accurate. We've actually had four new members in the last year, if you include last January. So we've had Hitachi joined last January, BitGo and Mondelez last February, and the Nairobi Securities Exchange in October. So four new members. We did have DBS change their strategy. So DBS banks changed their strategy and moved off of the council, and we've recently had UCL. The UCL decision is interesting, and I think more will come out in the fullness of time. But it's actually net positive for Hedera, so I'm not considering that as bad news at all. And the LLC agreement allows, even though we have these 3-year rolling terms with a maximum of two, based on the council revoting the member back in. Governing council members can come and go at any time. Rather, they can leave at any time. They come through the process, but they can leave at any time, and that recognizes that there is no lock-in. They're there because they strategically want to be there. They are now with the more recent council members over the last couple of years, come with the use case they build. So there's a reason for them to be there. But if for whatever reason strategically they serve no purpose or see no reason to stay, then there's no lock-in for them, and that just opens up seats for more. And I know I get called out for talking about the strong pipeline all the time, but actually we have to look forward towards the ongoing refresh of the council. We're at that point in the governing council's maturation where actually within the next year or 2 years there will be annual or 6-monthly turnover of council members, and that's a good thing. I mean, that's what we're designed for. I suspect we'll hit some kind of steady state at some point in that period, and so I know the membership committee is very keenly focused on what happens at that point. Is there a waiting room? What do potential candidates look like, and how can we keep them engaged at the time when they're waiting to join and the council is full. So they're just looking back 12 months and considering rotation is actually a good thing, because those are important parts of the governance of the network. Onboarding and offboarding and the processes around that. Just taking, transferring or taking nodes down and standing them up again for new candidates, new governing council members, is all part of the operations of the LLC. So the fact that we're being exercised in those things is actually a good thing.
Okay, so we have another one here about the council. I know we answer these a lot, but Save My Soul says they might have an issue trying to fill the governing council when their term expires. How are they going to keep it full? It's still not full, and I'm hearing a half a dozen members are about to expire this year. Now, Rob, this comes from, there was an influencer, Zach Richter, who put out a video on Hedera, and he's mainly an XRP influencer, so we can't be surprised that he doesn't know all the details about Hedera, but we certainly appreciate him covering it. Now, I already talked about this a little bit earlier in the show, but Rob, I wanted to get your input on this as well. You know a lot more about it than I do. So what do you tell people that are concerned that this year we're going to start to lose council members and, not have anything to backfill and start to decline into the 20s or, even further, and not maintain the critical mass of council members that we need?
Well, firstly, I say it's not true. There is no indication that we're going backwards at all. Like I've just said, there's a kind of going to be a natural rotation at some point. There are, for the sake of kind of operational efficiency, We don't vote on the renewal of every council member at the point, that the exactly on the 3-year point. It's within the council chair's gift to decide when that happens. And for the last 2 years, Brett McDowell has put it onto the agenda to discuss in December, which means that all of the renewals within that calendar year get batched and voted on en masse, individually, but en masse, in the December council meeting. So that's why all the renewals happen at that point. I think we had 11 that were in that category last December. The minutes haven't been published yet. So the actual details of that vote aren't public, but we're not going backwards for sure. So I would firstly say not to worry about that, and we're definitely going in the right direction in terms of filling the council. I know everyone wants to see it full, but as soon as it's full, the next question will be, well, who's coming off next, and who's in the waiting room, etc. So I don't think these questions will go away. It's just people are very interested in the governing council because it's a very unique thing within the Web3 space and sets us apart from all the networks that we have such a strong council that governs the network.
Rob, I do have one follow-up question here. So the vast majority of the council members have use cases, proofs of concept, whatever it may be that are building on Hedera. Now, new council members have to have a use case that they're planning on building on Hedera. That's a huge impact as well. When we're looking at these new council members, what are the discussions that are taking place around what they're building? Is it multifaceted? Are they focusing on one thing, or is it different from candidate to candidate?
It's different. I mean, it's different. You're right in saying that unless there's an exception, right? Unless there's a unique reason for them to be there without a use case which has the potential of going to production. And there are a couple of candidates that fall into that category. All the commercial, institutional, corporate members of the council that are in the pipeline need to come with a use case. Now, some of them, interestingly, are actually already building, and it's in the building of their proofs of concept and their prototype that they've found that product market fit, or they've strategically decided to pursue that, and then they've come to the council. In the past, it's been the other way around. There's a nice use case idea, you've got an advocate internally, and coming to the council actually helps them on that journey from ideation through to prototype, pilot, and production. So the interesting thing is now we're seeing some of these candidates already building, and they've already engaged, or they've actually held off on the governing council application until they've proven to themselves that there is a reason for them to be there. It's usually one use case. Usually starts with one use case, but once they've kicked the tires and they've assessed the technology, they will then work out that actually it's such a general purpose network with these APIs and tools which enable them to address many use cases. But it's usually the one that is kind of top of mind, either from an operational efficiency perspective, and they're looking to distribute the ledgers to improve their existing process, or because strategically they're looking at new products or services and are using emerging technology to address those.
Well, it's good to hear that they're further down the line. It's only going to help our acceleration for more network usage and so forth.
Yeah.
The next ones, actually, we have two that are going to be on AUDD. The first one comes from Rooster13, who asks, haven't read into it super closely, but is the AUDD stablecoin building on Hedera or XDC? Rob, I think this is a great opportunity to talk about how these stablecoin companies that are popping up are looking at these different networks and how they choose their different networks. But it's usually not exclusive, or almost never exclusive, when you're talking about these companies, right?
Yeah. So a stablecoin business has a product, and the product is this, usually a fiat-backed or currency-backed token. And they don't really care which blockchain or distributed ledger technology those are issued on, except that they want to go to the place where there's the most liquidity or the most utility and the most customers, right? So it's a product that's looking for customers. So traditionally, stablecoins have been issued on the networks like Ethereum, which have the most eyeballs, and then usually you go to an XDC or a Stellar or a Solana because there's a demand or there is an opportunity to issue onto those, but it's the same product. And as I think I said on X the other day, these one of these things is not like the other, right? They might look both like stable coins from the same company, but they carry the properties of the underlying network. And so for AUDD, which in Q1, so within the next 6 weeks, I don't know the exact timing, but very soon, will be issued or be launched on Hedera. That just adds to their range of networks on which they've already issued. So they've built the operation AUDD, or the company, which is AUDC, confusingly, have issued the AUDD stablecoin onto Stellar because they originally had a big grant from the Stellar Foundation, and Ethereum and XDC and Hedera coming. But one of these things is not like the other, right? So you've got a stable coin on Hedera. You can do lots of other things with that stable coin, which you might not be able to do on Ethereum, for example. Because you've got the super low costs, you've got the settlement finality, you've got the sustainability in terms of impact. So those stable coins as kind of core primitives of new solutions can be used in different ways. Now, they can be, typically stablecoins have been used just as stores of value on crypto exchanges because they've been, they're on Ethereum or they're Tether or whatever, and don't have very much utility beyond that. The likes of AUDD are looking to extend that utility into business. So cross-border is a very good use case where there are efficiencies to be had and costs to be saved for businesses transferring funds across border using these stablecoins. So obviously US dollar-backed stablecoins are by far the highest value within the Web3 space, based on USDT and USDC primarily. But locally backed local currencies have a place as well, because commerce isn't all done in US dollars. There are obviously a lot of local businesses that can benefit from the same utility that stablecoins bring to them. And so, things like supply chain management, the ability to kind of transfer value through supply chains using, the super optimized type of digital currency like this, payroll and payments, using it for capital raising, DeFi or fund management. All of these things are stablecoins can be used for. And so that's the pitch. That's the pitch of an AUDD or other businesses that are launching stablecoins in domestic or local currencies. And so from my perspective, having an AUDD launched on Hedera gives me an on-ramp or an off-ramp for lots of use cases that we might be looking at. And because it can be fractionalized and it's still super cheap with predictable low costs, you can get further into the retail ecosystem. And by retail, I mean more traditional retail use cases rather than degens. But things like reward points or micropayments all becomes very easy once you've got these tokens on Hedera. So AUDD launching on Hedera is a big deal for Australian Payments Plus and what we're seeking to do in the Australian market. But also it's a great reference point for other currencies elsewhere. So we talked about the Philippines last week as well. Stable coins there, they will have a whole set of other use cases which they can use those for. So very exciting times. It's going to move very quickly, I think, once these things are launched. And I think in the next month or two we'll be able to talk more about that, about how we see that progressing this year.
All right. Well, I actually have another one on AUDD coming from Victor Tay, who says, question for Rob, what's the expected TPS when AUDD goes live in Q3? Now, Rob, I think of stablecoins, even though it is a use case, you mentioned it's a product. I think of it more of a facilitator for other use cases who kind of get the credit for the TPS. So we'll say, it might be DeFi. So Saucer Swap gets the credit, or SKUX with working with Mondelez. It could be DPIN with CLSQ, or Neuron, facilitating their payments for transactional Internet of Things. So that's kind of the way I look at it. I don't think of the transactional throughput as going to or crediting the stablecoin. I look at the things that are then facilitated by the stablecoin actually getting the credit for that throughput.
Yeah, and that's what I mean by stablecoins being a primitive. It's a product from the perspective of the issuer, because of course they're trying to make money commercially and have ways of achieving that. But from a solutions builder, you need lifeblood. You need a currency to to affect your solution, and if that's as simple as utilizing the network's kind of native capability of atomic swap, for example, one digital asset or real world asset being tokenized and a fiat currency being tokenized on Hedera, you can swap that instantaneously, and that brings incredible utility to a whole variety of solutions across the board. But we need these infrastructural pieces in place, and so having new programmable money, gives us a lot of utility. And I know everyone's very keen and focused on TPS, but as I've kind of mentioned many times, it's only one metric, and the core metrics that, as chair of our new UseCom, are going to be focusing on, in addition to the ones that we hold dear from years ago, are also things like revenue and how value is being represented in terms of real world assets, and and other metrics that are standard across the Web3 ecosystem. So we can be assessed on them as well, and we can be assessed against like for like with other networks, and demonstrate how well we're doing. It's very important to be judged against the one's competitors when we're on leaderboards that everyone looks at, including the crypto press and other communities and potential investors in the businesses that we're supporting and building within our ecosystem.
Well, you mentioned one of those metrics, and we're going to be talking about that one here in a second. Revenue. It is a really important one. I think it's one of the top two, especially from the sustainability of the project from a financial standpoint. And Chris says, after giving out billions and billions in HBAR and cash to the ecosystem over the last few years, the annual revenue of Hedera is still very weak at about $3 million. When are we going to see this number materially improve? So, Rob, what are your thoughts on this one?
It's a journey.
Yeah.
I have no, material answer, because I think we're on a journey. I think we're improving. It's Charles's number one priority. Revenue is about sustainability of the network in every kind of facet of what that means, and having real utility with real projects building in production with product market fit and users is the thing that creates the revenue. And that's what Charles under the foundation is looking at, or is focused on rather, whether that be kind of near-term utility for retail, or medium long-term commercially and enterprise. All of these things stack up, and that's first, second, and third priority, I think, for all of us right now.
Well, Rob, it's the same thing you were addressing throughput last week. Number one, all these transactions are not created equal. So we have the smart contract calls and account creations. They're 5 cents. HCS is 1/100th of a cent. We have token transfers, which are 1/10 of a cent. So it depends on which of these and the mix of these that we're actually getting. But the most important thing is we have all of these applications that are being built and going through their own growth curves. And that's one thing that I think we should probably be tracking a little bit more closely, following the amount of revenue that's coming from each one of these use cases and what that trajectory looks like, what the use looks like. Now, we can see it really clearly for Karate Combat, who we've seen their usage go up, I think, over 10,000% over the past 18 months or so. But all of these use cases are going through that growth curve. Maybe not all of them to that extent. Maybe some of them are more. We don't actually have all that information right now. But all of those exponential curves working together create one big exponential curve, which eventually will make that hockey stick moment, and will have revenue to, sustain the network, incentivize token holders, incentivize nodes, and so forth.
Yeah, and these are commercial concerns, right? We provide, or Hedera provides, the network on which can be built. 1,000 transactions a second using HCS, right, has a cost associated with it. And it's very easy, actually, to batch up those transactions and reduce your costs by 90%, let's say. If that were a decision, a strategic and commercial decision to make, right? So we, as Hedera, don't prescribe any particular way that commercially you use the network. We want solutions to be built that do use the higher priced transactions, of course, because that brings revenue to the network. But we can't dictate that you use HTS over HCS if that solution is better with, one transaction a second on HCS. It's why would I, as a builder, go to a more expensive transaction just because it's cool, or just because I can tokenize something that no one actually wants to buy. So that product market fit is really important, and the commercial decisions of builders and founders need to be borne in mind when people are kind of thinking about TPS. TPS isn't the be all and end all, but we know that we have a network that scales sufficiently at the moment, and then ultimately almost infinitely for as many builders as want to use it. But we've got to recognize that, and the community has to recognize that founders will find the cheapest and most cost-effective way of using the network, because at the end of the day, the bottom line is all that counts.
Well, that's actually brings up another point, Rob. There may be solutions that some of these applications find that use the cheaper solution because it's cheaper, rather than using what's the best solution. And that, I guess, all comes down to where you set the prices. Now, we haven't seen any price changes for the most part. I don't know of any price changes of any of the services that we've had to this point, but that's what you could kind of do to force them into using the right thing, or making sure that we're getting the proper revenue from a given service.
Yeah, and I've prototyped micropayments systems. So I have architectures that use HCS. I've got architectures that use HTS, and I've got architectures that use the smart contract service. Each one of those is more expensive than the other one. So, you've got to cut your cloth accordingly. At the 100th of a cent end of the spectrum, that is appropriate for some use cases. And maybe, transactional Internet of Things or IoT devices, transacting at much less than a cent, let's say, 10th of a cent or cheaper, at very, very high throughput. So, that's, if you need the price point of those transactions to be that low, then that forces you can't use a HTS architecture, because, that's a 10th of a cent or more, depending on how what other services you use. So it is driven by the use case, and it's driven by kind of the commerciality of the project and the business. But we have all these tools, right? We have the ability to have a really kind of bare bones but super efficient architecture at one end of the spectrum, and then we've got the sophistication and nuance and ability to orchestrate, very much more interesting architectures at the other end, and everything in between. And this is what architects, solution architects, and founders, have to consider. It's not just how many tens of thousands of HCS TPS can I get? There are a lot of other things that need to be put into the mix when deciding on these solutions.
A lot to figure out, there's no question. So, next up, I wanted to get some feedback on this statement from Boosted Ego. The Nairobi Securities Exchange CEO seems very excited about what they're building. This is a bullish sign. Compare this to a middle manager representing a governing council member. The CEO has access to regulators and easily influences budget and project priorities. Kenya is also ripe for disruption. I see tokenization as another form of financial inclusion. Imagine M-Pesa users being able to use their mobile phones to buy and hold fractional stocks. So M-Pesa is a financial application, but Rob, I know you've been really excited and impressed by what Frank has brought to the table here. What are your thoughts on what Frank has done so far?
Yeah, so Frank Whitty is just such an excellent human being in many shapes and forms, and I'm delighted that he's on UseCon. So he's one of my colleagues on the new Network Utilization Committee, and he has come to Hedera, with his eyes open and understanding, what he needs to do for his business, the Nairobi Securities Exchange. He's got a background in finance and working in banks and working with big four consulting businesses. So he really knows his stuff. And he's also, for me, and one of the reasons we were so excited bringing the NSC through the MEMCOM process was that it's kind of the perfect model of a governing council member. You've got a representative who's a key decision maker. In fact, it doesn't go much higher than Frank in the NSC. I assume he has a board to convince, but he's definitely the guy. They have influence far greater than their own business. So across Africa, and they are kind of a leading organization within the securities exchanges organizations there. And he's open-minded as well. He's very keen to explore a range of use cases, but with the ultimate goal of tokenization of securities, and core to his business, not innovation at the edge, the core to his business. So there aren't very many of those kind of models for governing council members, but it is a great, he'll be a beacon of what our governing council should do, I suspect, in a very short period of time. It's not really fair to say, or to characterize governing council members as, middle managers, because actually every governing council representative, bar none, I would say, are there for a reason. They're there because they have been appointed to do a job on behalf of their governing council member. They're there because they've advocated maybe, or have a very clear role internally to make a difference, so that there are no passengers. And they need to be able to make decisions. So they may not be CEOs like Frank is, but they're certainly within these big organizations. They have key decision-making capability. So, I would say that if not all, the vast majority of the governing council members have that ability. And as I've know very well myself, it's often quite challenging to navigate large corporations to actually affect change in any way. Traditionally, affecting change within big organizations is hard. When you introduce into the mix, emerging tech, maybe negative press, regulatory lack of clarity, et cetera, there's lots and lots of reasons for risk officers to say no, or defer, or rule it out of the budget for the year. So, these representatives actually are carrying quite a load in terms of moving forward within their own organizations, but they all are, right? They all are all, to a greater or less degree, progressing their organizations, because that's the reason that they're there and the reason they're on the governing council. And remember, they have all these touch points as well. We all have responsibilities to the network. We have responsibilities for hosting the nodes, for making decisions, for signing transactions, for attending the council meetings. So the characterization is not actually correct, because they're all there for the right reasons.
Understood. So, I mean, it's mainly about getting the person that's most passionate and has the ability to make the changes in that organization to get these use cases built on the network. So,
Yeah,
no, it's a
and
go ahead.
and I mean, the second part of the question is something I actually hold very dear as well. So the questioner talks about tokenization being a key driver for financial inclusion. He refers to M-Pesa. So M-Pesa, if people don't know, is a very innovative non-blockchain payment solution that emerged in Africa, mainly out of Kenya, 10 years or so ago. And it really almost overnight affected the inclusivity of the population, and it enabled access to financial services and to be able to make payments and to receive payments for micro businesses significantly and very quickly. So, there are many examples of where emerging technology kind of leapfrogs the incumbent technology for the good of the bottom billion people. I actually co-authored a book on this a few years ago, specifically looking at where emerging technology can address financial inclusion. And it is the bottom billion in the world. I mean, there are terrible access to financial services, which kind of inhibits and encumbers the ability of subsistence living in terms of actually getting into the commerce kind of flows and making a better life. And technology can and does make a massive difference. So a lot of the projects that we're seeing in places, not just in Africa, but in Asia Pacific, in parts of the world that don't have good banking services for people who don't have regular income or very on living on subsistence levels. Can't get insurance, are impacted and affected disproportionately by things like climate change. This is where technology really makes a difference, and I'm delighted that we've got many projects actually within the Hedera ecosystem that do just that. Because micropayments, right? For me, it's if you can send, like I said, from 1/100 of a cent through to 1 or 2 cents, the cost of the payment is that low, then you can have commercial viability for applications that do allow and for transfer of value in the order of 5-10 cents, a dollar, where most financial infrastructure needs it to be much higher than that to be commercial, and therefore you can get greater access to use cases for that kind of bottom billion of people.
Well, this is the biggest promise of Web3 as far as I can see it. It unlocks the economic potential of, like you said, billions of people
Mm.
around the world. It gives them access to capitalism, which raises more people historically out of poverty than anything else. And of course, it impacts them the most, but it's good for everyone. It's more production. It helps everyone.
Yeah.
All right. So, Rob, normally I stay on point. We only talk about Hedera, but we do have one that's going to go off the rails a little bit here today. It comes from AAJJ7RO, who says, I'm coming to visit Australia. What's a good place to see there? Never been. Better yet, when's the next time Rob is planning an adventure? I want to go.
Rob's adventures.
Uh huh.
Well, Australia is an incredible place. If you've never been to Australia, you can't really go wrong. I mean, Sydney, which is where I live, is just the harbour is one of the natural wonders of the world. I believe if you're a keen sailor, if you're just a lover of beaches, if you're a diver, any kind of water sports, it's just incredible. But of course, we've got our other cities are equally attractive for different reasons. If you're a diver, let me know. We'll come and we can dive everywhere. If you're happy to encounter some big toothy animals, which is my preferred adventure, as everyone knows. But yeah, I mean, the incredible places. Queensland, you've got the Great Barrier Reef, but you've also got the Daintree Forest, which is just prehistoric, one of the world's oldest forests. You've got Uluru, the red heart of Australia, which is a spiritual pilgrimage that always blows my mind. I mean, if you're into wines, you can't go wrong on a tour of the various wine regions and everything else. So I do commend Australia. I'm a Brit that came here for 2 years, and 10 years later, Australian citizen and never going home. So you kind of I'm preaching now. Rob's next adventure. I don't. There are so many things on my bucket list. I've got a couple of mountains to climb, I think, in the next 2 or 3 years. I always, I run some big shark diving trips all around the world. My daughter's just learned to dive, so most of my adventures are currently being done through her eyes. I'm really, really enjoying the adventure that she sees unfolding before her, and maybe my old cynical, been everywhere, done everything kind of attitude is being freshened up by vicariously enjoying it through her. But yeah, I mean, so many things left to do. Time is ticking.
Well, enjoy it. Our next adventure is going to be in the concrete jungle of Denver for HederaCon. I'm
Indeed.
looking
Yeah.
forward to that one. But we have one more remote Shark Bites until we hopefully can do a live one at that event. But Rob, that's all I have for you this week. We'll see you next week.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm looking forward to Shark Bites Live, the Denver edition. But I'll be back next week. Cheers. Bye.